The work that I'm presenting at ICA-LA is an 80-foot wall projection that has an immersive installation element. There are 4 projectors that are presenting stop motion animation footage that I've captured of 5 dancers that I've worked with for over 7 years developing the project. The projection on its way to the wall is interrupted by a number of hanging screens that break up the image, cause the body to be staggered in space forward and back. Siccer is an exploration of the kind of history of Black gesture and Black bodies inside of media capture and how to think about the effect that the sort of, as Hito Steyerl says, we're all being represented to pieces. And I think about the ways in which this project is talking about the fragmentation of the body and the decontextualization of gestures and expressions and even the experiences of a person when in front of the camera. But I'm really trying to kind of amplify and blow up that being photographed feeling because it's both omnipresent in today's world and also sort of sinister and compelling as a storytelling device. Describing myself is always one of those hard things. My artistic origin story is as a dancer. I started when I was 7 years old. I went on to study art history. So I'm really kind of thinking about dance in relationship to contemporary art. And that's a spatial question, a question of discipline, choreography, and its relationship to other artistic disciplines represented in the museum. And the other part of my story is that I have a big family roots in the Deep South. Really, the swamp is where my father's side of the family comes from. So I spent a lot of time in the swamp and near the swamp and thinking about people who make their lives at the edge of this kind of murky place. I think about the swamp as a place that is green, much like the green screen that figures prominently in the video footage. The swamp is a place of decay and disintegration of biomatter, of plant matter, and also of the social strictures of slavery. So historically, indigenous people and enslaved people would escape into the swamp to build maroon communities, to kind of establish their own norms and rules, and maybe even, cite forms of sociality and governance that they were sort of forced into and reinterpret those. So I think about the swamp as a really beautiful and complicated, dangerous place where some of these rules and laws come apart. And that's also reflected in the presence of cattails and, again, the sort of this orange band of light, which kind of edges the gallery space as a way to think about the color of light as it's filtered through that sort of murky humidity in the swamp at sunset. The sound and music in the installation are a really big part of the experience of the work. The installation, the video components and the kind of sculptural components of the installation are really thinking about the camera and the lens and the technicalities of lens-based work, but then the sound and music is what offers a kind of like emotional tenor to the work. So some of the sound is the inner monologue of the performers that you see on the camera kind of talking to themselves while being photographed. So it's a way to kind of reveal the interiority of the subject and kind of give them an opportunity to narrate their own experience. And then there's all this other music, which was built out of years of working with Holland Andrews, but also Jeremy Toussaint Baptiste, whose voice also figures into the sound of the installation. So the sound carries just a history of these ideas evolving, and I think in some senses like makes some of the imagery more abstract, more human, but then also more abstract. Yeah. The title is Sicker, and it is a play on an adverb that comes from Latin sic, which means so it was. It's used in writing, academic writing, typically when you're quoting someone that you've done an interview with, or you're citing someone who's not writing in kind of standard proper English. And so you include a quote and then you put sick afterwards in order to identify that as a writer, that you're including wrong English. And I found that this sort of sick has become a tool in the text to point out the wrongness of the source that one is nonetheless using to amplify one's scholarship or thinking about the world. And it became an apt metaphor for how Black bodies are, captured and recirculated and both used for the edification of various like aesthetic and literary projects, but also kept in a kind of status of a sort of disruptive presence within norms of language and embodiment. So siccer is a way to think about how to take that word sick and make a unusual word out of it that sort of sounds like a number of words and is also just a kind of creates its own definition of sort of pushing the limits of citation and the relationship to proper English to open up a space where the performers' bodies can be dynamically kind of weird and up to strange things. That sort of hopefully emerges along the way as people watch the installation. When I started this project, I didn't think that green would become my personal brand. I like to take ideas to their sort of absurd conclusion. And so green has become this really prominent presence in the project. I think a chroma green background is necessary when photographing, filming bodies to then, in post-production, kind of recontextualize them into other spaces and times that aren't actually possible. So green kind of represents future time in a way, and yet the green of the chroma green landscape and its relationship to sort of the hyper-capitalist filming and circulation of bodies is sort of a melancholy future that is still like stained and marked by the kind of racialized nature of of capture. As I sort of obsessed over green over many years, I also thought a lot about animation in connection to green, and so Kermit the Frog really comes forward as like an important figure that is not animated in a kind of stop motion way, but is a puppet, and so brings up these other ideas of kind of the voice within the body and ventriloquism and, a voice that's operating you. And then in 1975, Kermit the Frog and Ray Charles were guests on the Cher show, and they sang a duet of It's Not Easy Being Green. And it was a moment when I started thinking about green as a color that's related to the blues, and which is also kind of a Southern music form. And so these kind of threads started to come together and resonate. And the other fun fact is that the human eye can see up to 10,000 different shades of green. And it's the color that we can see the most different shades of, which really relates to evolution and survival. And, the human eye is such an important player in this project and thinking about differentiations of color and identification and all these nuances of looking. The live performance of Sicker is always presented alongside the video installation because the projects are in conversation in that they are both kind of about the labor and work of these five performers who have opened themselves up to being photographed and directed as dancers and performers, as musicians. And it feels really important for me that a local audience like the LA audience has an opportunity to see these performers live, to experience them in flesh and blood, in real time, and their genius and skills as performers. And it feels really important to have people just to kind of bring that human element back, that they just don't stay images on a screen, but that there's an opportunity to give them life and have them and hear directly from them. This installation is representative of such a significant amount of my thinking and output over the last 6 years. So it feels really important and valuable for people who live here to see that and really get to know how my brain works. Personally, it's significant because it is the most robust presentation of the installation so far. And then LA being a kind of, a city that's run on cinema provides a rich opportunity to put this into dialogue with other cinematic work happening here. So the project really intersects multiple forms of filmmaking. So it is kind of a little bit of a love letter to Los Angeles. I've worked in dance and theater and text-based work for so long, so it's exciting to think about being here where there's so many skilled filmmakers, videographers, camera people, actors, performers, and what that could offer as a next series of works after this installation. So yeah, it's the piece represents both like the past, the present, and a possible future. My name is Will Rawls. Come down to the ICA LA to check out my installation Sicker, which is on until August 31st.